Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. My name is Jonathan, and today I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Johnny. Johnny, how you doing today?
Doing well. Great to be back, and right almost on the eve of the launch of the Switch 2, which is very exciting.
Yeah, it's so Johnny. Like this. It's all about the Switch 2 at the moment. Everyone's very excited about Mario Kart World, which we've covered, and also Donkey Kong Bonanza and a host of third-party games that are coming out. They'll be in our hands very soon. But we also realize there's just so many original games, games for the original Switch that are exclusives or were previously exclusives that are absolutely fantastic and are games that you don't want to miss out on. So we've decided to extend our Switch exclusive series to part 4 today.
Part 5, John.
Part 5. Oh my goodness. No, so many.
Four wasn't enough. We need to
Yeah.
do 5.
That's how many games there are. Even I don't know. And I've still got some in my collection that I was jostling between, like, oh, do I add this one or do I add this one? But we're settling on 6, which is our usual format, 3 each. So who knows? Maybe we'll drag it out to part 6 one day, Johnny. You never know.
We can't. The people of Perth and Beyond, they don't have time for a 3-hour episode today, so we'll keep it to 6 games.
We'll keep it nice and short and sharp for 6. And look, the reality is, it's an interesting time because a lot of people are jumping on board with the Switch 2, but some people can't afford it. Some people are still getting through a backlog of old games. For me personally, I'm finding there's just a wonderful array of games on the Switch that I haven't played, and even borrowing Kirby from you, Johnny, was really nice, which we've mentioned previously. And even Super Mario Brothers U, like I need to try that out. So there's a whole lot to get to. We are going to kick off with a banger today. I think when we had this discussion and we brought this up, it was like, oh, how could we not bring this game up earlier? It's so great. But Johnny, tell us all about Super Mario Maker from 2019. Super Mario Maker 2.
What a great place to start. It's like dipping into that, and we've talked about this previously in this series. So if you haven't seen the previous 4 entries, definitely go back and check those out. But 2019 was just a stellar year for the Switch in terms of there was just this volume of awesome games that were coming out in that year. And unbelievably, one we haven't talked about yet is Super Mario Maker 2. This is obviously the very much anticipated sequel to the 2015 original Super Mario Maker on the Wii U. Now, I have a lot of fond memories of this game, but what really draws people to Super Mario Maker 2 is this ability to design your own levels, and you've got the sequel opens up a couple of different extra styles of Mario game that you can design levels for. So obviously you've got your kind of classic NES style Mario levels, but you've also it's introduced like the 3D world style as well, and obviously you get your Super Nintendo Mario World style levels you can make. So I have beautiful memories of playing this game with my daughter. It was one of the first Nintendo Switch games she played,
Cool.
and she really enjoyed the level design aspect. There's one level. It was first of all the design, and then there was also getting to think about what you name the levels, because you get to give levels the courses names. And there's a course that I know she, as a sort of 6-year-old, because we were playing this a lot through the pandemic years. There was one level she was very proud of called Toad Goes to See the Magic Fish, that she would almost insist family, friends, and guests visiting, they'd have to have a playthrough of it when they came around. Something I didn't realize at the time is that this game also has a single-player story mode where you go through playing through courses. So the premise is Peach's castle has been unintentionally demolished, and Mario has to go through levels to gather coins so he can pay for the reconstruction of Princess Peach's castle.
Yeah.
The courses in that story mode, they give off the appearance that you're playing through player design levels, but I looked into it a bit further, and it is actually levels that have been designed by the developers using the in-game design feature of the game. But still, it is fun. I've been playing it this morning. I'm playing through a few levels, and there's a nice mix of different Mario styles to play through in that story mode. So yeah, makes it worthwhile. If you're not hugely into the level design kind of type of genre of game, that story mode is actually quite a bit of fun.
Oh, it's fantastic. That was the main like draw card for me. So I I'm quite into like a lot of the Mario spin-off games, and I was a little bit put off by the Mario Strikers, like the soccer game, because it didn't have a single player mode when that came out later. But when this came out, I was just delighted. It was just like, oh, great, they've got a single player mode for me, even though I know it's multiplayer focused. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, I really like the premise of like you would just wander along your kind of world map, which is just that front visual representation of the Mushroom Kingdom. And then you would go in and do your individual levels, and some of them were really short, but they were really well curated challenges. Yeah, really tested your skills in different ways, and you could pick different levels if you struggled with some particular levels, which I quite liked. But in terms of the design perspective, there was a lot of joy in that. I love like the ease of use of that. So there was some concern. I remember that when this came out, how is it going to operate without the Wii U pad, because the first game was so quintessential to using that technology, but it works really well on the Switch. I found it just worked really fine with the touchpad, even with the Joy-Con attached. And I just love that you could play through a level and you go, oh, that doesn't quite fit. Pause it, put in a new element or remove something, adjust it, and then come back and go, all right, now that feels really good to play. And look, this game, when the trailer first came out, it wasn't clear. You know, they talked about there's a few new features that are like slopes, and you're like, okay, slopes, what else is there? But then it just got loaded with content, like even Phanto or Phantasmo from Super Mario Brothers 2 and the Key and the Angry Sun all became these interactive features which like gave you a lot more depth to the game as well. Not to mention all the Koopalings. And then we got the new Super Mario 3D World art style in 2D, which is kind of funny the way they did that, but it worked quite well. I thought this is a fantastic game. And like you said, 2019 was a banger of a year, and in my view, the best year for the Switch. And when this came out, it just felt like Nintendo was swinging and firing on all cylinders. So this is definitely a game you can go back and play now. Although I just keep thinking, Johnny, because it came out in 2019, surely the sequel's coming out on the Switch too soon. Surely, well, hopefully we are going to see some sort of Super Mario 3D maker. It's really hard to know. But for anyone who just missed this game and wants like a new 2D Mario challenge to try out or to jump on and share levels with their friends, absolutely play it, because this is probably one of the best value for money games, Johnny. Johnny, I want to ask you, did you get into the DLC at all? Because there was some Zelda DLC with Super Mario Maker 2.
I remember when it came around. I didn't actually get into it at the time. I remember seeing it thinking that's pretty cool, like to go through and play as you could go through levels with like Link with the sword. And I thought that was neat. I just, at the time, because that year there was just, and those sort of years, there was just so many other games to play that I probably didn't quite get there. But I remember it distinctly being and sort of noticing it and saying, oh, that's pretty cool. So it is nice to be able to go back to this game and go and explore all those different features, because there is so much content packed into this game.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so that's Super Mario Maker 2. Still value for money, still looks great, still feels good. Curious to see how it just comes onto the Switch 2. I'm not sure if it's backward compatible. It probably is.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, being one of their like first party titles. So yeah, awesome game. Okay, on to my first pick. So I really love the Xenoblade Chronicles series. I'm big into the JRPG games. My favorite in the Switch is the second one. And then it's kind of like a close tie between the second and third. But I just had to like highlight the the very original one, which is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, not X, which was released this year, but this one that was released around the middle of the Switch's life cycle. So for those of you who don't know, one thing that Nintendo did really well with the Nintendo Switch is just create a whole lot of remakes and remasters, and this is one of the better ones that came from the Nintendo Wii era, where it got the upscaled resolution. There was some like redone effects on all the characters, lots of new content added. So there's a lot there for people to return to with this game. But for me, I'd never played the original on the Wii, and I played the second first. So it was nice to go back to the original and see what's the original story. So the premise, there's a lot going on the screen, but the premise essentially that you have these two giant titans, which are these living kind of like countries, and they're both dead, extinct, so to speak. And your character, Shulk, and his companions are on what's called the Bionis, which is like the Earth type style one with grassy plains and icy cliffs and all this kind of stuff. And it's locked into a battle with the Mechonis. And the Mechonis, which you can see on screen here, are like the mech type characters who are just attacking them, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. It starts as like a traditional adventure, the power of friendship, who is this new adversary? Where are they going, and exploring the world? But then it does a couple of things really well. Like it flips your understanding of the story and the perspective of the game on its head a few times. There's definitely those wow moments, which is what I love when it comes to Japanese role-playing games, something that's really fresh and new. It plays really well. Like it's just a really kind of cruisy, relaxing game where you're battling monsters. So the battle system's a little bit like an MMO, which I'm not that into. Which means you're basically choosing multiple input commands when you're in the middle of a battle, and it plays out automatically. So you've got to position yourself and then choose the commands that kind of align and get like bonuses, party bonuses, and all buffs with your party and stuff like that. But the reason I'm here for these games is the story, and because the adventuring aspect is just beautiful. The day-night system is really nice to look at. It's really relaxing. It's beautiful to be like climbing up, like the hip or the leg of one of these gigantic titanic beings and just seeing this incredible view. So the views in these games are as good as, if not better. Well, I might get some flack for that, but it's right up there with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in my view. So it looks absolutely gorgeous. And then I think of all the games, the Xenoblade games, the story is probably the second strong. Well, some people think it's the strongest. I think it's the second strongest. Definitely worth playing through. Full disclosure, I am at chapter 14, near the end of chapter 14, which means I'm about 2,000 hours in, because these games they're enormous. They're enormous. I'm probably about maybe 40 hours in, and I'm not even doing a lot of the side quests, and I'm playing on casual mode, just because of I like to play other games as well. So that said, having gotten that far, absolutely recommend it. Just a really wonderful story, looks beautiful. Yeah, definitely something to look at. Johnny, I know you're not a big RPG fan, but have you heard of these games before?
Oh no, definitely heard of this series. Again, I tend to be a little bit gun shy around JRPGs because of the time commitment, but I can definitely recognize that they look beautiful. They definitely look really captivating. I like that companion system that most JRPGs have, and it looks like it's done really well here. So I can see why you'd be getting so much enjoyment out of this one, Jono.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I think, so for me personally, again, I think I mentioned this before, when the Switch came out, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was what got me into the Switch, was why I bought it and got into it. So it's fantastic to have the trilogy of games that have come to the system, all new in their own way, even though this is a remake, and then Xenoblade Chronicles X. So there's plenty here that's exclusive to the Nintendo Switch in terms of Japanese role-playing games. Go check them out, even if you're a new Switch owner or you're thinking to get a Switch 2 and you want to look back at these games. They're really well worth playing. So that's Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and there is extra content on there with Future Connected for fans who played the original. Johnny, what do you got up for your second pick of the day?
So I'm going to take you to 2020 and November 2020, when Koei Tecmo gave us a hack and slash prequel to Breath of the Wild called Age of Calamity. So this is a game very much in the style of Koei Tecmo's Dynasty Warriors series, but it's featuring the Legend of Zelda characters, particularly in their Breath of the Wild kind of incarnation. So in this game, it's supposed to be set about 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild take place. So it's kind of a prequel. There's some funky kind of time travel stuff happening in this game, almost like alternate timeline kind of stuff happening. But essentially, it brings all the key characters from Breath of the Wild, like Link and Zelda, and the 4 champions, the pilots of the divine beasts. And you go through these kind of chaotic battles where you're just clearing through masses and masses of bokoblins and moblins and all the different Zelda enemy types. It's a very kind of hectic experience, but it is an enjoyable game. I played it a couple of years ago. I've revisited it recently, and it's good fun. There is a very epic opening battle scene that gets you going into the game, and it all takes place on the Hyrule Field in front of Hyrule Castle, and that kind of introduces you to the mechanics of the combat and that kind of thing. But it is a fun game. It's all about, like those Dynasty Warriors games, it's all about controlling the map and just clearing through enemies as quickly as you can to build up your special attack and that kind of thing. I think this is a bit of a gem from the sort of middle of the generation, and I think it's been reasonably popular because Nintendo's decided to do a follow-up game, and it's a prequel to Tears of the Kingdom. It's called Age of Imprisonment, or something like that.
Yeah, Age of
and that's
Imprisonment,
coming
I
soon.
think. Yep.
Coming
Switched.
pretty soon, I think, for Switch 2. So someone is playing these games. I don't know. I should probably should acknowledge there has been some criticism of there are some instances where there are some frame rate issues with this game, where the frame rate gets a bit crusty in some instances. So it's not a perfect game, that's for sure. But for what it is, I've thought it to be quite enjoyable. Have you had any hands-on experience with this one, Jono?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a demo available on the Switch eShop. And interestingly enough, Johnny, I was looking at the figures, the sales figures, and this game sold close to 5 million. So it's actually done really well. It's been a kind of good stopgap between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, because obviously Nintendo just can't pump out a new Zelda all the time. And long-term Nintendo fans will know that, it's an event when we get a new Zelda game. So I played the demo and I really enjoyed it. I really like that this generation in particular, and even a little bit in the Wii U area, we saw Nintendo team up with Koei Tecmo to create these Musou Warriors spin-offs of beloved franchises. I know some people feel like this is not up their alley, but if you're judging it by what you're seeing, definitely try the demo, because it's actually very tailored into a Zelda game. So, for example, even in the demo, you can play as Impa, and you can play as a whole range of different characters, and they feel really different. They look really different. I thought the battle and combat system was a lot of fun. Like with Impa, I was teleporting around, and then I was shooting daggers everywhere, moving really quickly, and it felt really different to Link, where you would use like his powers from Breath of the Wild, which looked really cool. So this is a game. So that's what I really liked about it. But then the second thing I really liked was there is a story here. So if you're like a Super Zelda fan, give it a try, because there's more to like mine out of that Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom history and lore. And there is an interesting story to follow that's exciting. It gives you that sense of like, you're on the good guys team, you're fighting, to save the world, all that kind of thing. The other thing I noticed this game does really well is all the little ways it incorporates like Breath of the Wild. So, for example, there's a world map, and you can click on little events, and then there's all the little icons down the bottom that sort of represent Zelda and the rest. So yeah, it's a really good game. I've only played a few hours with the demo, and I think there's a lot of value in that. But yeah, just another game to go back to and go, there's something else to play before the sequel comes out, or if you haven't played this as a core Zelda experience. think it's fantastic. Age of Calamity, yeah. So that brings me on to the next one, which is also by Koei Tecmo. And I had to include this. I've written an article about it. It's on the website. This is a game that is definitely up there. Like, this is our fifth part for this series, but this is close to the top of the games to me. Fire Emblem Three Hopes. So, within one of my favorite games on the Switch is Fire Emblem Three Houses. That's in my top three. Absolutely love what they did with the Fire Emblem series, which is basically like a strategy based. It's like Nintendo's strategy series, right? Now, this game came out maybe 3 years after Fire Emblem Three Houses, and it's an absolutely really interesting and wonderful retelling of that story. So it still has all three houses: the Blue Lions, the Golden Deer, and the Red Eagles. This time you don't play as Byleth, who was the protagonist in the first game, but you play as, well, you can name the character yourself. And they have their own avatar called Avril or Ava, I can't remember. But essentially, Byleth is the antagonist and you're the protagonist. So I love this concept because I think it lets you like re-explore a whole world, but then see it from another perspective and then expand on like particular story bits that weren't picked up in like the original game. And that's what this game does really well. So for example, if you go down the Golden Deer path, so you can pick either of the three houses at the start. And word of warning, these games are epic. Like each house it's about 20 hours of gameplay. Like you go through their entire campaign using all their unique character units per battle. Yeah, it's fantastic. But anyway, so for example, if you go to the Golden Deer, it explores the conflict with Elmira and brings in another quite intriguing new character from that conflict. And then if you play the Blue Lions, for example, there's a big focus on all the local lords that Dimitri has to fight against, like Cordelia, I think it is, for example. I haven't played the Black Eagles route, but I have put over 40 hours into the other two and completed those. Now that like the core gameplay is like Age of Calamity, so it is a Muso game. It's that, power fantasy. The missions are 5 to 10 minutes. You sweep through with your character, and it can be like a warrior on a Pegasus, or it might be like a warrior with an axe or a mage. But the system is again really fun. Like it really, like there is a really clever hook that gets you like just fighting and then pressing a button that sets off a power up at the right time. In between the actual fighting, you also go into your map, and then you can tell your other units to go to other areas to collect objectives, or you can swap between the units. So you might use an archer, for example, that's really effective against flying units, and it just feels great, like shooting down all the enemy Pegasus and Dragon Riders. And then you might switch to a sword fighter to go take an objective and hold that, and then you might switch to another one. Now that sounds chaotic, but one thing Nintendo and its partners do in a really genius way, I find, is that they streamline these systems. So it doesn't feel chaotic to play. Within the first mission, you'll go like, oh, okay, I get what's going on here. So yeah, I just love it. This is a game I can't highlight enough. Like I would say to you, if you haven't played it, whether you're a Fire Emblem fan or not, give it a try, because the story, it's fully voice acted. There is tactical depth here. There are side activities which you can participate in. So like, training, like there's like horse grooming. There's like, you can sit down with your mates and have a meal to buff them up. Like if you want to do that stuff, you can, but you don't really have to engage too much with those systems if you just want to push through the main story. And then there's a couple of decisions within the main story for each house that you can make that affects the outcome in its interactions with Byleth and the other characters. So yeah, look, this was honestly an underrated gem for me in particular. And I'm of all the games I have in my Switch library, I will probably go back to this and go play through the Red Eagles. It's that good, honestly. I just loved it. It was far more than a Muso skin. It was a complete game in and of itself. And Koei Tecmo, it just works. Johnny, based on your experience with Age of Calamity, I know you're not as into the Fire Emblem universe, but what did you think about this one?
I was just going to say, it must be, if you're a big fan of the Fire Emblem, the mainline Fire Emblem series, this looks like much like Age of Calamity, as is Age of Calamity to Zelda fans. This must be the equivalent for hardcore Fire Emblem fans such as yourself, Jono, that it probably adds additional texture to that series, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to that lore.
Yeah, I think that's the main worth in it. And so Nintendo also released Fire Emblem Engage, which is the most recent game, and I've played through most of that, and I was really hoping that would be like on this list of exclusives. But it was just, it was not for me. Like the characters are all kiddish. The writing was terrible. Graphically looked beautiful, but it didn't have like everything that Fire Emblem Three Hopes and Fire Emblem Three Houses brought to the table. So yeah, if you love your anime, if you love your big like epic war stories, if you like some combat and tactical stuff mixed together, done really well, seriously, go check it out. Fire Emblem Three Hopes. I've written all about it on our website. I couldn't shut up about it, but I'll shut up now.
Nice one.
Johnny, Johnny, what is your third pick?
So for the final game on my list, I pulled back into the backlog. Went all the way back to 2017 and the launch year of the Switch, which brought us a fantastic reboot of the NES Blaster Master, which was originally developed by Sunsoft back in the day. And as you know, Jono, I came very close to including the NES Blaster Master in our favourite NES games episode last week, but didn't quite make the cut to be kind of top sort of 5 material. But nevertheless, do love Blaster Master. And in 2017, the 2017 version is fantastic. I picked it up recently so I could get into the Blaster Master spirit. And it, like the original on the NES, you play as your protagonist, Jason, who goes on this subterranean tank adventure in the quest to rescue his pet frog. There's a slight modification on that for the reboot, but it's essentially the same story, wacky story that it was in the original. It's effectively a action platformer, but you're spending most of the game in this tank that your character stumbles across in the beginning of the game. But there's a great mix of there's areas you're going through all these subterranean caverns, and then quite frequently you're getting out of the tank for platforming on foot and going into sort of smaller caverns to like fight bosses and that kind of thing. Now, this game actually already has two sequels on the Switch, which I haven't gotten to. I haven't played those yet. And this game was initially, I think for about 2 years, maybe just under 2 years, was exclusive to the Switch, but also I think there was a 3DS version. I think around 2019 they did also get ported to PlayStation, Xbox, but very much started its life as a Nintendo Switch exclusive. So I thought I'd sneak in Blaster Master Zero into our list today.
It's awesome. I mean, Nintendo Switch, like the beauty of it is like looking into the past. I was talking about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive. It's a remaster, and here we have is like a beautiful kind of remaster of an old NES game. I tried out the demo of this too, knowing you were going to talk about it, and I really like the feel of it. I love that what they've done here is they've captured the NES spirit of a game, but it seems, I haven't played the NES, so I can't comment on that. I'll have to hear your thoughts, but it feels like it captures like modern controls, modern systems to make it more accessible, and even some of the graphical effects a bit more like, the NES couldn't do that, but in my mind it could. Was that your feeling of this game was, Johnny?
Yeah, definitely. So the NES version, which I did play back in the day, was a lot less forgiving, as you'd expect. And also they've just added so much, like in terms of backgrounds and textures, there's just so much, like there's so much more layers in terms of the visuals for this one. Whereas obviously the NES was a lot simpler, the NES version. But yeah, there's a lot to this experience. So it does capture the general kind of spirit of the NES version, but it's its own kind of experience. It's it's much more than just a remaster of the original. It's like almost call it a reimagining.
It looks like that too. It felt like that just from playing that one. I was also going to ask you, because I really like the way the perspectives work. You go into like a cave, but an area when you're out of the tank, and the perspective changes, and you're shooting like enemies. I thought, I really like that. It feels good, and that gameplay feels probably equally good to the tank gameplay where you're navigating the world as a tiny tank. But is this game level based overall, or is it like one huge world like Metroid where you do need to find power ups to progress? That's what I was curious to know about, because it has a bit of a Metroid feel to me to it as well.
Yeah, it's almost, I kind of almost want to think of it as Metroid in a tank, because you are going world to world, and you start off and you're exploring this kind of forest area, and then you kind of progress through different biomes.
Yep.
So it's got it's got a bit of that Metroidvania aspect. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so Blaster Master Zero, there's a demo out there for it, and then there are sequels. I do know there's a little bit of a hardcore fan base out there for it. Go ahead. Sorry, Johnny.
Oh, I was just going to say, part of my love for this series is back when I was a kid, I was a big fan of the there was a novelization, young readers, young novelization series for some of these classic NES games. Like there was one for Wizards and Warriors, there was one for Simon's Quest, there was one for Blaster Master. And the Blaster Master one, I remember being kind of the best written one. So I have a bit of added reason for my Blaster Master nostalgia today, Jono.
That's cool. That is so cool. And who knows if we do like a special for the NES again, like looking at more games, it'd be interesting to see if you include like the OG. You can get out some of the graphics and stuff and go through that to compare it. But that's awesome, Johnny. I love it. Love that it's on the list. All right, so the final one today, and the final one from me. It wasn't too hard to pick from. There are a couple of other contenders. I did think about. Not really. Like I did look at Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I didn't want to overload the Xenoblade Chronicles stuff. So there were a couple other games. Donkey Kong Country HD for me was like not quite there. But Donkey Kong in another form was there. And this is a game I ranted about earlier this year because I dug it out. I found it. I was like, where are the Donkey Kong games? And this is before Donkey Kong Bonanza was announced. And I was like, where are they? Like the whole generation, we didn't get a new one. And I am the advocate to say, yes, we did get a new one. And this is it. And this is the one you need to go play for real. It is really, really good. So this is Mario plus Rabbids Donkey Kong Adventure. It's actually DLC to a main game, which is Mario Rabbids, which is good in its own right. So if you're a Mario fan, you'll enjoy that. But I picked this above that. In part because I'm a Donkey Kong fan, but I just love the mechanics here too. So essentially, this is probably a 10 to 12 hour standalone DLC. For those who are not familiar with this genre, it's a tactical battle game. Now, it's in the vein of XCOM. So what that means is you have your squad and the enemy has their squad, and essentially have like a movement, shooting, and special powers kind of phase all built in. It's turn-based. It's really, like, on a strategic level, it's really gratifying. So, for example, you might use Rabbid Peach, who's like, just don't ask me why Peach is a rabbit mode. You have to play it to get into the lore of it. But essentially, like, you could move her around the board, you could kick an enemy rabbit, and then you could bounce off like Rabbit Kong, and then you could jump behind a block, and then you could get out her special power, which is like a caterpillar remote control car, and send it off to a group of rabbits and blow them off the board, like all within the space of one turn. That's the kind of game it is. But look, I love this game for a lot of reasons. First of all, I'm a huge Donkey Kong fan, so in the absence of new Donkey Kong games, and I did put Tropical Freeze on this list in one of our first couple of parts, and that's my favorite Donkey Kong game of all time as a platformer. But this game captures the spirit of that game and Donkey Kong Country series on the SNES. So yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Like, it has settings in like the jungle, like just on the shorelines, where you'll see like various colored coral around, and it's raining. It just looks lovely. On the beach, and then in the temple, like the classical kind of Tiki-Tak tribe temple that you see, and which you've seen in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tracks. So it's gorgeous to look at. And then the soundtrack for the Donkey Kong games has been remixed here, so you'll hear it play throughout the battles. Like the intense level stages are played there to add tension to the battles, whereas the more cruisy like music has been added to the exploration aspect of the game. And then in between all the battles, you have this kind of adventure exploration aspect where you're collecting bananas, or you're solving small puzzles, or you're just moving through like a level until you get to the next combat challenge. Some of the puzzles are absolutely fantastic. I like the kind of bigger crafted ones. So there's one that's based around like a sea coral organ, and you have to like play the notes in the right way to play the right Donkey Kong tune to progress, which you'll know if you're a fan, and if not, you'll be able to figure it out. And then there's another one which is based around like an aqueduct covered in vines, which is a bit of a nod to the vines levels on Donkey Kong Country HD and some of the original Donkey Kong Country games. So it's just full of that Easter egg stuff that you just love as a Donkey Kong fan. You're like, oh, I remember that. So it looks beautiful. It plays really well. Again, the combat, without recapping some stuff, like there's just some really cool stuff in there, like Donkey Kong, he throws a banana, for example, and you can get different types of bananas. So all the characters have their own skill trees, but you can throw like a chili banana, for example, and it sets your enemies on fire, and then they'll run around off the board, they'll run around into each other and catch on fire. So there's all the hilarity around that. It's that kind of silly, zany humor, which isn't hilarious, but it's still fun, and it's integrated into the game in a really clever way. But yeah, I just love it. I think it's a bundle of fun. And even the fact that the animals from Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 get lots of nods in the form of in the weapons or their background creatures on the world map. Love it. Johnny, what do you think? I know you're really into the strategy games. So what about this one?
Yeah, I've been meaning to. These are on the list to check out these Rabbids games. Is this one? What kind of length is this one? Is this like an hour experience or something?
No. This is like a full-on package. So you could play 10 hours to get through the actual campaign. But then in addition to this, there's a whole bunch of challenge levels. So you can go back and play through all these levels and each theme. And then there is a multiplayer aspect to this too. So there's a huge amount of value in this. And this is just the DLC for the Mario plus Rabbids base game, which itself is very long. There's a lot here to get into.
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And then there's a sequel, of course, to the Mario Rabbids game, which includes Rayman. And so this is all developed by Ubisoft. So yeah, I'm really curious to see if they do something new here with the Switch 2. Maybe integrate, Pokemon or Kirby or Metroid or, hard to know, even Zelda. But I think one of the first three would integrate better in terms of this. But yeah, it's a wonderful game. It just gave me a lot of joy because there was just such an absence of Donkey Kong until we got, the announcement that there's a Donkey Kong World announced as part of Super Mario World in Japan, and then Donkey Kong Bonanza. So go check this one out. Yeah. So look, that's our 6 games for the day. Johnny, I do have like a put you on the spot question. Sorry.
It wouldn't be a Switch exclusive episode without one.
Sorry, not sorry. This is like our 5th part. We've covered so many games. And look, people of Perth and Beyond, if you haven't seen the other parts, we've pretty much covered most of the exclusives, except anything from the Pokemon series. We've covered games from Ring Fit to Mario 35. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff.
Apologies to the Pokemon fans, communities, the Splatoon fans. They're just probably, we're not the generation for some of those games. We just missed the Pokemon craze.
Yeah.
I just watched the South Park takeoff of Pokemon last night from the early 2000s. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I got the humor quite well. But yeah, John and I think, just missed that craze. We're just a bit too old for the Pokemon craze. So apologies to the Pokemon fans in particular.
There are lots of good Pokemon games on the Switch. I've tried them, totally. But they're just not for me. But Johnny, my pop quiz question is, like, of all the games we've covered across the series, are there any particular games of any of them that you think people need to go back and try out, whether they're like well-known like Mario Wonder or lesser well-known like Metroid Dread, or, is there anything in there that you just feel like, no, if you want to get the most value out of your Switch now, check this game out. This is a game that was particularly interesting or special.
Definitely. And a lot of the games that we've talked about in the series fit that bill, John. I definitely highly recommend people going and playing the Metroid games we got on the Switch, just because I want people to play that so we get more Metroid games. Because if people don't play them, we have these horrible Metroid droughts. So that's a bit of a self-interested reason.
Yeah.
But there are some really classic games that I think you should do yourself a favor and go and play them. And one thing I had on my mind is the great thing about with the Switch 2 coming, with that being backwards compatible, it means you can go back to your backlog, and in some cases you'll get a nice little Switch 2 upgrade for a lot of those games, or at the very least, in most cases, there's a short list of exceptions that you won't be able to play on Switch 2, but it'll mean even if you do move, even if you did decide to jump on the next generation Nintendo console, that you'll still be able to go back and play some banger games from the Nintendo Switch 1 catalog. But for me, it's things like, it's got to be Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Metroid games, Metroid Prime Remastered, and probably, yeah, I'd be, if you hadn't played them, I'd be looking very excitedly at the Switch 2 versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes,
because they are starting to look really nice for the new gen console. What about you, John? What are your kind of, to return the favor? What are your must play games from the Switch generation?
No, I think you picked them, like the Prime ones. Like I love the Fire Emblem games in particular. Well, some of them, the ones I pointed out in particular, Xenoblade Chronicles are among my favorite. I think Shin Megami Tensei 5 is fantastic. It's just a little hidden gem, but it was also recently ported to the PS5 and the Series X, maybe PC, I'm not sure, with upscaled graphics and more story content and some improved features. I think that game is really cool. Like, it's so unique and so interesting. And that's like Pokemon, but like in a weird, bizarre, demonic world. And you're just like, this is bizarre and crazy. And I want to take it all in. One game I kind of did want to give a shout out to that didn't make our list, which might be a good stopgap for those of you who, I guess, like, aren't happy with Donkey Kong Bonanza. We're wondering where Super Mario Odyssey 2 is the collection Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Because those games still hold up to different degrees. I've played bits of them myself. I haven't played them all the way through. But Johnny, I know you would love, and you love these games. What do you think? These is a good collection to try out for the Switch?
Definitely, yeah. You can't go wrong with these.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's all we've got. That's the end of our fifth part of our Nintendo Switch exclusives. Go back and check the other episodes. That's going to be an end of an era for us. There are rumors of a Nintendo Direct coming up in the next month, I think June, which is what they typically do. Certainly, if not June, I'm sure September they'll roll something out. So I'll be very curious to see there. You excited, Johnny?
Very excited to see what's coming up in the next few months. Mario's got a 40th birthday coming up, so let's see what comes then. I just wanted to quickly say thank you to all the people of Perth and Beyond for all their feedback and love they've shown this particular series, the Nintendo Switch exclusive series. So I've really enjoyed making all these.
Yeah, we do know that you like it out there, and we love it. And obviously, we're big fans of the Switch. We're still looking at the Switch 2 and getting on board at a particular time with that. But the Switch generation has been fantastic. And certainly in the next couple of weeks, if there is a Direct, and certainly over the whole summer of gaming period, we're going to do our next podcast around that, around all the new game announcements. So exciting times. Don't let some of these old gems that you've missed out, go back and check them out. Pikmin 4, just another one. Go check that out. Really, really good.
Nice.
Loved it.
Good call.
But that's all we have time for today. So have a great weekend, everyone, and we will catch you at the next episode. It's the Perth Gaming Crew over and out. See you later.